Alright, in this video we're going over editing, building, and building tips, but first we're going to start with aiming. So how we can improve our aim is by using this aim course. Right now, with settings, everybody has different settings for aiming, so I can't give you exact tips, but what I can do is allow you to actually work out if you are better at using your ADS aim assist or actual hipfire aim assist when it comes to SMG. So you want to go into horizontal game mode, and as you can see here by me, you want to start spraying at this pink alien that is flying around. Now what's the difference between ADS and hipfire can actually be different beneficial, as with different settings can actually sometimes be beneficial to use ADS, or it can sometimes be better to use the hipfire option. Now what I recommend you do is obviously go around and see if you can track him by ADSing, and if you can't, switch over to actually the LT spam technique. Now LT spam doesn't really work no more, but what it actually does allow you to do is that if your settings for the ADS are actually pretty slow down, you will not be able to keep up and track this player. But by actually coming in and out of your aiming technique, what it's going to do is speed up and slow down, allowing you to actually keep up at the same pace of the thing that is moving. So actually an LT spam technique can be worth it. Inside that same aim trainer course, there is also this other game mode which actually allows you to move across, and what you can also do is take the same practice that we used beforehand of the ADS or hipfire and then practice that by using it while you are skating along on the ice. This will train your aim for when you're actually moving and moving objects for what it would be in a game. There's also another one that you can actually call, it's a bit like Kovacs but on a console, and you can actually practice your ADS or hipfire technique, whichever you found out to be the best for you and the best for your settings, because everyone has different settings and some people might be better at ADSing, and some people may be better at obviously using their hipfire. But moving on to the last part of the aiming tips before we move on to anything else, I just want to say, of course, if you did work out that you're better at ADSing, use that spam technique, well, instead you do have to actually practice your hipfire, because obviously there is going to be some situations that you do have to hipfire. So that game mode there that I did just show is the best for that. But now we can actually start to talk about how we can optimize our game for the less amount of ping and less delay, because this is a massive feature that console players struggle with. So when it comes to the select game mode screen, always make sure you click creative, because it actually gives us the less amount of delay even if you're going to play battle royale. Next up, make sure you're always wearing a default skin if you want the less amount of delay, as loading in textures from different skins can actually go ahead and make your game lag even more. Also, creating a fresh account can even give you less input delay, so that could be worth it, as you see here, the amount of skins you have actually will give you more input delay. It's very minute, but it can actually add up over time. So I definitely recommend having a new account if you want the least amount of delay, and just a fresh account, or just wearing no skins. Also, if you have the option to actually use a support creator code, make sure to actually use custom matchmaking features, as it actually allows you to host your own LAN game. So rather than connecting to Epic servers, you actually host the lone LAN game for your internet connection, and that'll actually give you 0 ping. So that's the 0 ping sort of side of things, but we can actually increase it even more.
Keep the Halloween.
If you're still struggling and your ping isn't quite down to 0, because it's very beneficial if you do get it down there, because it allows you to actually improve and edit faster. So when you get into creative, make sure you actually go to the featured islands and change them all to this exact code map for better ping. Now what this is actually going to allow you to do is have all these maps load in for nothing instead of actually the featured islands. Now as you can see here, it brings my ping all the way down to 1 ping from 17, which is super beneficial. Then you can go into your own creative island and actually crank and practice. The reason we did this all is to make sure that we actually have the benefits of having the most amount of less delay and best ping possible. They'll actually help you improve dramatically if you're 1v1ing anyone or just practicing overall. But now let's talk about best controller settings to actually improve on, so that you can actually learn the best controller settings if you do not know any of the good ones. So as you can see here, I can edit extremely fast, and the first thing you want to do is make sure you have motion blur turned off. This is one of the only things we can do on console to actually remove the delay from actually the frame blending that goes on when motion blur. Next, you're going to make sure they have every single record replay turned off. Don't worry, we're actually going to now go ahead and get into some settings for the actual controller after we just talk about this, and that is that you want to make sure that you have confirm edit on release on. This is one of the newest settings, and I'll get into that in just a bit, even if you don't like the idea of that. If you're an exponential player, make sure you're using these settings. These are the god settings that I personally use, and I absolutely love them, and I succeed on them massively. If you play linear on the other hand, then make sure to use these exact settings, as these ones are absolutely perfect for linear also, and don't worry, you'll be aimbotting kids on both of these settings no matter which one you prefer, and honestly, linear or exponential, both of them are really good. Next, you want to make sure that you actually turn subtitles off. Subtitles are actually run in the background and actually take up more FPS. Next up here for the actual binds for my controller, make sure you actually go ahead and copy these down if you would like to, but a really important thing is make sure that no matter, even if you're not using it, bind something to switch mode / edit, as it'll actually remove your delay completely. Also here, as you can see, that is my dead zones, but make sure you copy these account and privacy settings. This just allows to get rid of any pop-ups that will actually counter out any less delay and all that sort of stuff, so just make sure you copy that. Next up, and next tip for the editing is actually how to edit faster. Now what this is you're going to be sliding your thumb from B to Y or circle to triangle if you followed my bind specifically, and when you slide your finger across, that actually speeds up your edits and makes them insane, just like me. But now we're going to talk about how to actually play better under pressure, because all these tips are great to know, but if you can't play well under pressure, then it doesn't matter. So you want to go into creative and make sure you go into the Scalet's actual new box fighting map, as it will actually give you some great practice. Don't worry if Scalet's map isn't there in future. However, if you just find any box fighting map or zone wars or anything like that in the creative fields, make sure you're just grinding these rather than practicing in anything like solos, anything like that. Make sure you're always practicing in these as a high intensity and always keeps the pace going. As you can see with Scalet's map, what he actually has designed is that after a couple kills and stuff like that, it actually shoots you over to a different area that's more confined each time, as you'll see in the gameplay shortly. Now why this is beneficial is if it gives you a shorter amount of space to fight people, it's going to mean more activities going on and more fights are going to be happening. This forces you to fight more players and get more comfortable with fighting players up close, so that when you go into public matches or creative or anything like that, you feel way more confident in your ability to fight players on console. So as you can see here, this is all about box fighting, fast edits and building and editing and good aim, so it really wraps up everything in this side of thing right here. But don't worry, we get into some more in detail tips in just a minute, so don't worry about that one. But as you can see, like I talked about, it sends you over to a different box every few minutes that will get more confined until you're fighting players in the last exact box, where you have to have a bit of end scrim material, because you'll actually have to fight a zone as well as actually fighting players. So this will actually practice you for the late games in scrims if you ever play those, and practice, as this guide is obviously practicing us to make us better overall. Now we're going to talk about how to get better at editing. Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is muscle memory. So as you can see here, you can actually edit something way faster by going across in that small corner. So the muscle memory, you have to work out where exactly it is on the wooden wall. And for example, on the brick wall, I noticed this exact brick I need to look at before I click the edit button. And on the metal, you need to just memorize where the spot is before you even hit the edit button, so that as soon as you go to the edit, you're already in that corner, so you can make the faster edit. My next tip coming up for editing is actually going across diagonally when editing, because if you run across straight up, then you get less time to edit, whereas if you go diagonally each time, it gives you more time to prepare between builds. As you can see here though, when I go straight up, it gives me less time, and I actually end up failing some of my edits because it gives me less time. So if you're struggling with double edits, make sure to go diagonally across your ramps. Next, if you are in creative, place some of these movement modulators down and make sure that one of them is set to fast and one of them is set to normal. Now what this is going to do is make sure that you're speedy and you're in 2x speed. Now when you go and train and practice and do all my tips wrapped up together, when you practice these, you'll be playing in 2x speed, and this will make sure that when you switch back to 1x speed in a public match, it'll make it feel way slower and it'll feel way easier. Next thing you want to go ahead and do is do the double edit and double reset. As you can see here, this is actually benefiting us because it speeds up your double editing time and double resetting time, because resets are just important as editing, because if you can't reset those edits, it's not as good. Next up, if you can't actually do it, then don't worry, add an extra stair in there between. It'll make it way easier for you guys and it'll give you way more of a chance. But if you are still watching, then make sure to subscribe with notifications on if